Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Serial Gaming here, and today before we go into Raijin's LD and Kadaj Crystal Level 90, do consider subscribing to my channel and liking the video if you like my content today. And if you want to further support the channel, you can join up my membership, which I recently set up to enjoy some extra benefit and perks. Alright, so let's get into it. Right now we'll be getting Kadaj with his Crystal Level 90 and his rework. So his skill 1 volley now does a 3-split AoE HP attack, which also lands his fixation for 1 stack for those who never used Kadaj before. And his skill 2 mayhem now does a 3 single target HP attack with right now a 50% splash to his kit. He also get an upgrade to his LD. It now grants him the Mother Casket, which is the LD buff for 6 turn at start of the quest. And when using his LD, it now does a 6 single target HP attack. He also has an improvement on his LD buff itself. It now adds a HP damage up by a 10%, 50%, 20%, 25%, up to 30% based on the amount of stacks for his fixation debuff. Kadaj of course get his upgrade for his Crystal Level 90 as well. His EX now recharge at max during the quest, during start of the quest. And his first turn actually doesn't consume ability use. I mean, of course, except some of the ability like the LD and everything. And when using his EX, it does gravity the enemy's bravery 2-0, and then it performs a 4 AoE split HP attack. And he also has an improvement on his follow-up as long as the Kadaj is targeting the unit with 5 or more stacks of his fixation debuff. The follow-up now does a 2 single target HP attack. His additional ability is a single target HP attack, and it does right now a 40% attack up, a 30% brave damage limit up for 6 turns for himself. And of course, for whichever unit that Kadaj target with his additional ability, it now grants the target a 4 turn of 5 stacks of fixation debuff. So naturally, if you're using Kadaj at the quest start, you want to use his additional ability first to grant the specific target a 5 stacks of fixation debuff, and then proceed with his EX so that he can have the maximum damage at the beginning of the stage itself. The upgrade for Kadaj is actually pretty solid. He does have a lot of damage right now in between HP attacks, as well as that nice follow-up attack on a single target. Although it might be tricky or it might be a little bit odd to have him when you want him to switch target, because his fixation debuff will have to be reset if he switches target. Of course, you can use his additional ability to grant him that 5 stacks immediately, but it only has 2 turns, so if you're switching target very often with Kadaj, it's not exactly the best play here. But do note that Kadaj is actually he does have a lot of utility packed in this debuff. The first one, for first stack, he does steal 100% off the bravery gain. So basically, Kadaj is always going to have a good amount of bravery after attacking the enemy. So he's not going to be too afraid of getting a break from the enemy itself. The Stigma debuff, which his EX land, also has a bravery sap. So it is actually Kadaj actually protects himself quite well in that situation from the enemy's attack, regardless if it's bravery or HP attack, so he can quite be safe without having a tank in the party with him landing all those debuff and protecting himself with the bravery gain after his HP attack. And the best unique thing about Kadaj is his gold frame debuff, of course. Any debuff that applied by Kadaj can be gold frame with his EX. However, if you want to really utilize that gold frame debuff, you can actually put a very unique way to utilize it. First of all, you want to land a debuff with a spear, and commonly you want to apply a defense style debuff, so you want to give him Ultimisia Refined Spear or even a normal spear, and that way Kadaj attack can land a defense down debuff, and he can go frame that particular debuff. And when you're using a call that has the ability to actually override that defense down debuff, for example Faris call, it will be go frame as well. So Kadaj can essentially go frame one additional debuff that is actually not in his kit but lies in that spear itself. So it depends on which utility you want him to be. Like I said, most commonly defense down is the debuff that we're going for. So that is one way to actually utilize and abuse Kadaj Gold Frame debuff ability. Okay, so moving on next, we have Raijin. So Raijin naturally get a lot of rework in his kit because he hasn't been released. He hasn't been reworked since his EX Plus. Alright, so skill 1 of Raijin, which is the Feast, I'm only going to mention the plus version because it's really easy to access to that. It only requires him to maintain the Thunder Mode buff, and for him to maintain that, you either use his skill 2 or his EX. Okay, so moving on then, we'll be talking about his skill 1. It's a single target HP attack dealt by 5 times. And it does give the party a physical attack up buff like usual for 6 turns. It's a good buff, but it's not frame, so it's easily replaceable in this situation. His skill 2 plus is a 3 AoE single target HP attack with a 50% splash to the entire to the entire enemy. So like I said, this skill 2 mainly is to refresh that Thunder Mode buff. But of course, given how slow Raijin is, it's actually not a huge requirement for him to use this skill to actually refresh his buff, because his EX actually recharge at a very fast rate and Raijin is very slow, so that makes it a lot easier to charge his EX. Alright, so with the Crystal Level 90 upgrade, his EX now does a 4 single target HP attack with 100% splash, and you can just take it off a way that he's dealing 4 full HP attack. He also get an upgrade on his HP plus attack, which is the Lightning Discharge plus plus. Alright, so this ability does a split AoE HP attack and inflict paralyze on all target if you have his Thunderbolt buff at 3 stacks. And now it's a instant turn rate skill, so it means that he can actually use this skill and goes back into his normal ability to recharge his Thunderbolt stacks. So for those who never used Raijin before, he has a buff which is called Thunderbolt. It increases every stacks when Raijin use an ability, including additional ability or call ability. So every time Raijin take an action, this Thunderbolt will increase by 1 stack, and at 3 stacks it will convert this HP attack into that Lightning Discharge plus plus, which I talked about. And the problem with using him before is that if you're using this Lightning Discharge plus plus, you're basically using 1 turn from Raijin himself. Although it's a very good attack, but to charge it to 3 stacks, because I talk about Raijin's slow speed, it's really hard to actually charge it to 3 stacks constantly. But with this new upgrade, it's basically saying that you just need to charge 2 stacks, because using it will actually convert the Thunderbolt back to 1 stack, and then he'll gain an instant turn again. So he'll easily increase his Thunderbolt stacks back up to 2 stacks again when he finishes his turn. So this makes Raijin a lot easier to use and control the enemy's movement as well. Raijin also get an upgrade on his additional ability. It's a single target HP attack, and it now grants the entire party a 40% physical attack up and a 50% brave damage limit up for 7 turns. But the best part about Raijin's kit is actually his LD. It's a 4 full AoE HP attack, and it heals the entire party and grants a very powerful debuff for all enemies for 2 turns. So this debuff that he lands on the entire enemy is actually what makes him really relevant in this current era and in the future era as well. With the debuff on the enemy, it provides a 20% HP damage taken up, a 100% attack down, and a 100% HP damage mitigation. So basically the enemy couldn't be able to land any single HP attack on the entire party whenever this debuff is still up. Even if the enemy will land a debuff upon the HP attack will also be mitigated as well, as long as the enemy has this debuff. So the only downside for this debuff is that it lasts for 2 turns. But comparing him with Reno's Pyramid Effect, I would say that this is one of the best debuff that we will be getting. We will be making relevant to the Shinyu era. As to why is that the case, because Raijin's only issue with his LD is actually the fact that he only lands for 2 turns with this debuff. But if you combine his LD with the fact that you don't let the enemy get any single turn, so this debuff will always stays on, the enemies couldn't do anything to your party, especially when Shinyu actually has a lot of HP threshold where they'll perform a lot of off-turn HP attack as long as they reach that particular threshold, or if they reach that particular FR charge threshold. They normally follow up with either a HP attack or a attack that can land a debuff or very powerful debuff to your entire party. And with Raijin's LD ability, it actually mitigates that entire mechanics. So that helps a lot when you're doing future content. And Raijin's LD doesn't just apply on him being in a party. Even just using his LD calls also apply the same LD debuff to the entire enemy. So that itself actually makes Raijin a very good LD call, if not one of the best, especially given how much you can ignore the enemy's mechanic as long as you have his LD call ability in your party itself. Of course, I'm not speaking entirely without bias, but Raijin is definitely one of the best LDCA, if not the best call that we'll be getting in this current era. He's just too useful for that particular kit, and he does have a very good longevity throughout Shinyu's era for his relevancy. So Raijin, like I said before, if you're running him in the party, he's still a very solid unit. He has Thunder and Chant, and in Peril he has AoE heal, he has Paralysis, and he has a very good LD debuff. So he packs a lot of things in his kit, but he still stays a very good supportive to the entire party while mitigating important HP damage and protecting the party with controlling the enemy. The only fault I really find Raijin is the fact that he's so freaking slow, but I would say it's not a very surprising thing considering that the fact that in his lore in Final Fantasy VIII he's also very slow. But if you really want to have him as the sole crowd control for the entire team, you might want to run him with units like Ram or Archmount to actually provide him a fast turn rate as well as more turn and increase his speed so that he can be more consistent in providing that lightning discharge plus to paralyze the entire enemy. Regardless, Raijin is a very solid unit to pick up. If you don't have Kadaj, this will even make the banner more desirable for you to pick up for my recommendation, because of the fact that Raijin just provides such a good mechanics ignore throughout the Shinyu era, which is even more commonly used nowadays because of how Shinyu's off-turn damage dealing work. Even if you do have Kadaj, I still strongly recommend this banner. It's a very future-proof banner that you definitely want to have at least in your roster so that you can breeze through future content easier. Alright guys, so that's gonna be it for my analysis today. Sorry a little bit about the noise. It's actually raining really heavily over here right now. So thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video, maybe later with Iroha's BT. I can't really wait. Alright, see you guys later. Cheers.